They're your friends, Ellie. Heidi and what's her name? The cat's name? Squash. Heidi and Squash. Here again, Heidi's exercising. Hey, you, bugger. What the hell do you think you're doing? She's jumping on. Jesus. I was thinking that the dog of yours is a lesbian. No. Yeah. Okay.
So what are you doing here today?
Just a minute. Did you set the mic? Is the mic set?
Yeah.
Can we start talking or recording?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi, Ellie. I don't have to mention the date because I think you put the date on the title. You even put there it's Berkeley. What you didn't put on the title, I think it's a lovely day today. Perfect summer day. The temperature's in the upper 80s. I don't know if it's as high as 90s. It was supposed to have been yesterday and the day before yesterday. But it's a lovely day with blue skies. As for some reason or another, I happened to be during my last visits here in the Bay Area. In fact, not only my very last, which was at your wedding, but also during previous visits.
Where are you on your way back from?
So, pardon?
Where are you coming from?
Where am I coming from?
Geographically.
Yeah. It's one of those long journeys from the Far East, Indonesia this time, on assignment project appraisal, 3-week assignment that started in the beginning of this month and will end exactly, oh, wait a minute. We made a mistake early on the date, you know. It's not the 30th, it's the 29th. Can you correct the date on the title?
Well, you just did by saying so.
Yeah, anyway, now remember tomorrow is October's 31, September's 30 days. This assignment will end the end of this month, which is Sunday, tomorrow, when I return to Washington. We left Washington, as a matter of fact, on August the 24th, I believe it was. And when I say we, I mean my better half.
Who is that?
Your mother, our daughter, Tammy, and her little offspring, Tal, who is about the sweetest little baby that I've ever seen. And if you don't believe me, I refer you to the movie that you shot in Monterey of the little one, which we saw just a short while ago. And her husband, Gabi, who came to Washington a week earlier. And we all came out here on the 24th, different routes. We converged in San Francisco, where we rented a car. And of course, the purpose of our visit at our coming here was to be at your wedding. Come here, sit down, please. Maybe the camera will also catch you. I feel silly talking all the time. Come here, sit down. Thank you. Okay, you wanted me to introduce myself? I'm your father, Israel Naor, born in Vienna, Austria on February the 4th, 1928. When I was born, my name wasn't exactly Israel Naor. My name was Erich Neubauer. And the name Israel, or Israel, was given to me, though not officially at birth, by my parents. As customary, every Jewish child also has to have a Jewish name. And as customary also in Austria, children were given names that are more or less in line with the culture which they were brought up or were going to be brought up. So I had a German name, Erich, and a Jewish name.
What was the name of your parents?
My father's name is David, or in Hungarian, Dezső Neubauer. My mother's name, Salomea Klausfeld, Mea for short. My parents came from basically 2 generations back, or 1 generation back, from Poland. My father's family migrated from Poland to Hungary before, I believe, World War I. My mother's family migrated after World War I in anticipation of the Russians' advance into Galicia, eastern Poland, into Austria. which was at that time part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and also included part of Poland, so there's no problem with passports. They settled in Vienna and were businessmen. My father's family settled in Hungary and went into the restaurant business. In 1927, my father, after his mother had died, traveled to Vienna for the first time in his life. He was at that time 29 years old, and he went on a trip accompanying his boss's son, his boss being the owner of a lumber yard where my father had worked, and he with his boss's son went to Vienna on a holiday, and that's where I met my mother. And this story has been well documented and recorded by UAE. I don't think I have to repeat it. But they got married in March. As a matter of fact, I think I made a mistake. My father's trip to Austria was not in 27, I think it was in 26, because they got married in March 27 in Vienna. I was born February 4th, 1928 in Vienna. And my brother Jakob, or George at that time, Georg in German. Did you know his name was George? Yeah, he was born 3 years after me, 1930. Wait a minute. He was born 2 years after. Made a mistake. My brother was born in 31. 31. My brother's birthday. Exactly. He was born in 31. Also
What is
Vienna.
your earliest memory from your childhood?
Memories of my childhood. My parents moved into an apartment, a rented apartment, a purchased apartment on Servittengasse in the 9th district of Vienna. That I remember very clearly. I remember the house that I was brought up, and in fact I took your kids back in 1962 to that place to visit it. I remember growing up in a very not exclusive neighborhood, but fairly middle-class neighborhood. An old-fashioned house. We were on the second or third floor, and our room was a large room that had iron bars in the window, where we used to stand up sometimes, my brother and I, and to the chagrin of the housekeeper, used to take a leak downstairs from the window. And she used to get frenzied about that, seeing the boys standing up there and peeing downstairs. I remember that very clearly, and I also remember that we had a nurse. Greta, I think was her name, and she couldn't manage us. I mean, there was a time when we were so badly behaved, my brother and I, that she just cried every time my mother came home, or my mother, who also incidentally couldn't take care of us and preferred to go and help my father in the business, and she came home, she cried her eyes out that we were so badly behaved. I don't think we're unusual kids. We just wanted to have a little freedom, and as such, behaved like ordinary kids behave. She apparently didn't feel that way. She didn't think. Rambling along, where was I? Yeah, I don't think that we kids were particularly misbehaved. We were just taking our liberties in doing things which we considered to be normal, and our nurse at that time did not consider it to be normal. So we grew up, spent I think our first 3 or 4 years mostly under the guidance of a nurse. My father worked long days, and my mother, who did not work with him long days, but took care of us, but not really indirectly. She couldn't manage us without the maid and the nurse. Oh yeah, we also had a maid, incidentally. Maid took care of the house, and we had a nurse that took care of us. Okay, Ali, join the crowd. Will you be in on the picture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so you grew up in Vienna, and
I went to school, a nursery
what school did you
and
go
school.
to?
The school that I went to was called the Schubert Schule, or the Schubert School. Like many other places in the world, the schools are named after national heroes, and Schubert grew up and wrote his music in Vienna. a lot of places on the 9th District in Sonata were named after Schubert. There was a Schubert-Gasse and a Schubert School right around the corner from where we lived, Grüne Torgasse.
What do you remember about that school?
That school, I remember that my principal, who had a Czech name, started with a P. I'll remember his name as we go along. The interesting part about that principal was that he was my principal from, I think, the 1st or 2nd grade, and he advanced with us up to the 4th grade. The grade schools or grammar schools in Austria are 4 grades, and then the 5th grade you already go to high school or gymnasium. So in the 4th grade, how old was I then? 11, 39, right. 38, sorry, Hitler came to Austria. And that was the low point of our lives, and that was also the beginning of a series of tragedies, which incidentally didn't hit us directly, but hit the rest of our family. At that time, the school, about 6 or 7 months after Hitler marched into Austria, the school, the Jewish boys from the school were expelled. The last year before we were expelled from the school, another friend of mine, Grossman I think was his name, and myself, who were the 2 known Jews. There was a 3rd boy, Perutz, in the class who was half Jewish. His father or mother was Jewish, and he did not declare himself as a Jew, incidentally. The 2 of us, Grossman and I, used to go to, Erwin Grossman was his name, used to go to Temple, which was right next door on a Saturday, every Saturday. We were excused from writing. We had to go to classes on Saturday, which incidentally clearly shows that we used to go 6 days to school in Austria. Sunday, of course, a day of rest. Saturday we had to go to school. We didn't have to write. And we were excused after the 2nd or 3rd class to go to Temple. So when we went to Temple right next door to the school, kids used to stand outside the Temple and throw rocks at us. I remember that very clearly, that it got to be quite a sneak out for us to run to clear this huddle and get into the temple before either the masses of kids got out during the break or before they had enough rocks to throw at us. Obviously, the Jews were not liked in that area. Second incident that I remember before we were expelled, one of the kids in our class came from a military family. His father was a general, a colonel in the Austrian army. And his name was Rendulic. Like many Austrians, name Czech names or Slavic names. And he invited the whole class to his birthday. I believe we were in the 2nd grade or 3rd grade. Mind you, 2 years, or year and a half at least before Hitler came to Austria. He invited the whole class to his birthday except the 2 Jews. Grossman and I were not invited to his birthday. I felt at that time like a stab in my back. It was very insulting. As a kid, you grow up in a society where you felt you were Austrian. I was born in Austria. I spoke the language. We were not particularly religious or didn't do anything other Austrians didn't do, except that we were Jewish. But that was enough to sort of classify us as different from all the other Austrians. Enough for this Rendulic to differentiate between us and the other kids in the class. He invited the whole class except us. That was incident number 1. Incident number 2 that I remember was the fact that they threw rocks at us when we went to a temple right next to us, which was not a Hasidic temple at all. It was what you would call nowadays a conservative temple, not Reform, but conservative, choir and organ. And finally, 6 months after Hitler came, March 39, finally, or earlier than that, I think, a few months after he came, we were expelled from the school, and my same principal, whom I adored as a kid, all of a sudden showed up to class, and his lapel had a swastika. And I realized
what did that symbolize to you?
That he was a member of the Nazi Party.
And what did you...
I didn't expect him to be a member of the Nazi Party. For some reason or another, he was friendly to us, but his behavior just changed. He became all of a sudden very aloof, very cool, almost alien, and told us in no emotion in his voice and in a very calm and collected tone that as of Monday we could no longer come to school. There would be another school set up for Jews, and we were to report to that school, which was the case. And so for a while we went to this other school. Then I switched to a gymnasium, to a secondary school, high school for a few months. then we left the country in 39, I believe. Though Hitler came to Austria, I think I made a mistake. Hitler came to Austria in March 38. So we were expelled by the end of the school year of 38, which was 4 months after Hitler came, and started the high school. The last month we went to the segregated Jewish school, and September 38 we went to the secondary school, Heiss Gymnasium in the second district, which was a Jewish secondary school, and there I studied for 1 year, and then I think 1 school year, and then we left the country.
So what year did you leave for Israel?
Well, we didn't go to Israel directly. From Austria we went to Hungary because there's no way that we could have gone directly to Israel. Oh, one other incident, if you don't mind, if I'm rambling along. November 1938. Where are you going?
I'm just going to change the camera. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll wait for you to reset. November 38 was the candle night, the famous night that the Nazis decided to revenge the assassination of the German ambassador in Paris by a Jew by the name of Greenspan, and they really went after the Jews throughout Germany and Austria, which at that time already was occupied by the Germans. They broke they broke into Jewish stores, they broke the show windows, showcases, and they sent Jews to concentration camps. In Vienna, it was particularly bad because Jews until that time really hadn't felt the impact of the Nazi occupation as much. And on this night, we were at home, the doorbell rang, and 2 SS troopers were outside the door demanding my mother. And I as a kid, I was at that time, 10 years old. I remember the horror that all of a sudden got hold of us. We wouldn't see our mother again. And my mother got dressed very calmly, took a coat, and they said, "Frau Neubauer, would you accompany us, please?" And so she went along with him. She didn't know where she was going. We didn't know where she was going. We didn't know whether we would see her again. Of course we cried. After about 2 hours or 3 hours, she came back. Turned out that the Nazis took her to sweep the streets and clean up the shattered windows of one of the Jewish stores right in the corner of the street. I don't remember which store it was, but it was a known Jewish store, and they knew exactly where the Jews lived and which stores were Jewish. And all she had to do was sweep the glasses off the street, and all people standing around jeering and laughing and sneering at her. She paid no attention to them, cleared it off, and came home.
What
That
did
was.
your father do?
We were at home. There's nothing he could do. I mean, he sat just like us, biting his nails and hoping her mother would come home. There wasn't a thing you could do. I mean, he could run after the SS troopers. They would have knocked him down, or they probably would have arrested him.
So you were in Hungary.
Okay, come on, join. Now you sit here and ask me a question. I don't want to. This is it's going to be very boring if it's a monologue.
It'll be even more boring if you don't say anything.
Now, if you sit down here, I'll be very glad to say. I'll say anything you want. Hi, Lauren. No, it's just fooling around, resetting the camera. Is trying to catch different angles, different poses, and well, the thing is this: he wants me to talk and talk and talk, and he set me off on a very easy subject to talk and to speak about it for hours. So yeah. Yeah.
Provocative question. Well, first, we're just covering preliminary ground today.
He hasn't asked any
Yeah.
provocative questions. He has
So you
asked.
went to Israel. What year did you get to Israel?
We got to Israel in 1939, September the 14th or 15th. I don't remember exactly the date. Your smile is very nice, except let me see. A few gray hairs here. Hey, Ellie. I see more. 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5, 6, 7,
Well, at least we can.
8,
If they're still within.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and one under your nose,
Okay.
16.
Thank you.
There's 16 gray hairs there.
By the time this video is done, we've got 24
25. Easy.
Yeah, keep.
Yeah?
Okay.
But we're doing well.
Anyways, you got to Israel in 1939.
1939, yeah. We got to Israel, the whole family. My kid brother, myself, and my parents. Left everybody else behind in Europe. Left my grandparents behind in Austria, and we never saw again. Left my whole father's family in Hungary, and we never saw again except one of the brothers, Oscar, who managed to come. The rest perished. Kids, there were plenty of kids. There were two boys my age, more or less. A girl younger, and Rosie had 2 kids. Oscar had 2 kids. There were 4 kids who perished. My father had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. Married. 2 brothers had one. His sister had 2 boys. He had a family. A boy, 2 boys, and and the other brother who managed to come to Israel, Oscar, had a boy and a girl. Disappeared. Okay, so we came to Israel in September 1939. Arrived there and settled in Tel Aviv, the northern part of Tel Aviv, in Chova Yarkon. Small 2-bedroom, 2-room apartment. Moved our stuff that in the meanwhile had arrived from Austria, a big lift van, and crowded us out the 2 rooms. The furniture was so big that there was hardly any room left for us. We immediately started going to school, even though we didn't speak the language. We didn't know any Hebrew, or hardly any. We knew just a few words. It's difficult in the beginning. My father set himself up in business. Difficult for him, not speaking the language. So we had a rough year, few rough years, and that was the beginning of World War II. And the whole country went, all of Israel, Palestine at that time, went through a rather difficult period. We had air raids, and we had several attacks, air attacks. I think the Italians mostly bombed Tel Aviv. It was very frightening for kids to hear the air raid siphons, which were very close, and hear the bombs fall. I remember that from World War II. Finishing in Israel, of course, it is in high school. 5th grade that I finished in Austria was still grade school in Israel, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, the first 8 years. So I went back to grade school, was set back a year, and then finally caught up. And after grade school, which was religious incidentally, I went to high school, Moria, which was also religious. Then joined the Gadna, which was an underground and illegal organization, the youth branch of the Haganah, if you wish. And after I got out of high school in 1946, I joined the Jewish Settlement Police Force as a supernumerary extra policeman whose duty was to guard the villages or the outskirts. We were not regular policemen, we were sort of rural policemen. And that's where I met Eli Benyamini and the others, one of whom you remember, Eli, who is here at Davis now, the English School of Medicine. And,
Eli, yeah, I won't forget that.
And others, yeah. And after we left the settlement police a year later, some of my friends went to the States in 1947, before the state was declared, but they decided to go and study in California. And they came here, San Mateo, and then University of California.
Why did you come to the States?
The reason I mention that is because I followed their footsteps, except not in 47, but in 1950, 3 years later. Because in 1948, as you know, we had a war, the independence of the State of Israel.
Where did you fight during that war?
In that war, I was still in the Gadna, even though I probably could have been in a regular frontline unit. And the only battles I participated really were on the outskirts of Tel Aviv, where the Gadna undertook several intrusions into Abu Kabir, the place right next to, between Tel Aviv and Yafo. And we raided, a platoon of us, and I happened to be in the lead squad, raided a position which at that time was manned by Iraqis, I believe, Iraqi regulars. And in this action, I lost a very dear friend of mine, Emmanuel Margalit, who got killed in our withdrawal. I was shot in the Pardes by the Arabs who kept on pressing us on the way back. Luckily, I got out without a scratch, but...
Did you see him when he was killed, or...?
Well, I saw him before he was killed. I didn't see him was killed because it was at night. We only heard his groans and moans, so we knew he was hit, and we carried him back, put him on the stretcher and carried him back. By the time we got back, I think he was already dead. He was hit by a machine gun burst and was probably cut. And I was a real dear boy at that time. He was very talented. He was the son of an actor from Habima. His father, Mayor Margalit, was an actor at Habima. And I think he was the only child. A real tragedy. The first tragedy hit close to home because it happened right next to me. That was in '48. After that, I was sent. Well, we took part in several small skirmishes, again on the outskirts of Tel Aviv, and then I was sent, if I'm not mistaken, to Pardes Chana as an instructor, and where the Gadna had a base school, it still is there, Machaneh Shmonim. And from there I was sent to officers training school, and
that's where I did my basic training.
Okay, Machaneh Shmonim?
Yeah.
Well, then we had something in common there. Officers training school, where we met this guy Siko, where Siko was my instructor, one of my instructors. I left the army in '50. Oh yeah, after officers school I was sent to the artillery, but at that time the war was nearly over, so I didn't fight any battles in the artillery. Except I was assigned to a regiment, and shortly thereafter again was assigned to be an instructor in Srifin, at that time Sarafin, and instructed in 1 or 2 courses, and then I left the army in March 1950, came directly to the States and to California.
Who were your girlfriends in Israel before you came to the States?
I had about 2, I think. One girlfriend's name was Pnina, whom I met in the army. I had a real crush on her. Boy, she didn't have a crush on me, but I had a crush. I had a crush on her. But I think she was pretty cool to me. In fact, wasn't very successful affair with that girl. Another
How
one.
How old were you then? About 17?
18. I was already 18.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty
why do you
slow.
think she didn't like you?
I don't know. There was too much competition. There were other guys there who were better than I guess, better looking. And so, I don't know, whatever it was. But she fell finally for a man who was much older than I. I didn't find particularly attractive, but she probably did. Must have. And there were some other girlfriends, not serious ones. One, I think, was Zahava. Try to remember. Tall girl I went out with for some time. I think she was the last one I went out with before I went to the States. And in fact, she contacted me, I think, on one of her visits through the States. And I introduced her to my family at that time. I don't remember where you were, either here in California or in New York. But I seem to remember I met her once. I hardly recognized her so many years later. And there was another girl I met. Debbie was her name. She's an American girl, Jewish girl from New York. Very shortly before I left the army, through my friend Zaira, Yoski Zaira. You remember Yoski? When we came to Israel in 1958, he met us in Haifa and he picked us up in his pickup truck and brought us home. And I met her in Israel, and then she went back to the States. I met her again in New York. And when my family, Nellie and etc., saw her, they were appalled. They said, well, I should have been able to do better than that. She was neither pretty nor anything else, but I thought it was not fair for these guys to interfere in my particular choice. But be it as it may, I met the girl in New York, and that's it. It's the last time I ever saw her. Then came to California directly after a week in New York, and within a month, I think I met your mother at the Jewish Community Center in San Francisco, where a bunch of Israelis went there to look for girls, and sure enough, we found naive American girls who were dying to meet Israelis and dying to dance Israeli folk dances, and I played the piano there, and your mother found something, some attraction. She found something attractive.
Naive American women.
Yeah, boy, was she naive at that time. And anyway, we met briefly there, and then she went out with another guy, some Leventhal, who went with me to school in San Mateo, whom I hated. The guy was an absolute bastard. And your mother chose to go out with him, and I was furious because I met her once. I could lay no claim to her, but the next time I heard that she was going to go out with him, I told her, look, Dorothy, either you go out with me or you go out with him. I don't like to play second fiddle, which I prefer that you record the story from your mother and ask her how she felt when I told her that. I thought she was a bit upset. I was a bit nervy on my part to tell her that, especially after we'd gone out once.
I mean, if you liked the guy, would you have minded less?
Maybe I would have minded less. No, I'm not so sure, because I probably had a crush on your mother too. But obviously,
The word is crush, not crash.
Sorry. Thank you. No, that's right. I had a crush on your mother, and apparently it must have been mutual, because from that time and on, we saw each other, I think, once every 2 weeks or once every week. I went to San Mateo. Your mother lived in San Francisco. We met in San Francisco, and then the first time I met your grandparents-to-be, the Lokshians, that was on Thanksgiving 1950. You want to change again? Huh?
Well, you just keep on talking.
And in 1951, your mother went to Israel on a fellowship. She had a Young Judea fellowship, and she was gone at that time for 6 months. That's right. She left in February and she came back sometimes in August 1950. And somewhere along the line, I'm not so sure who and how we decided, but we are going pretty steady at that time. And to some people, it appeared pretty obvious that we're going to get married. Like, for example, to the Salters, Nate Salter, who made a comment at your grandparents. Where are you going? Hey. So what do you want me to do? Oh, he wants me to ramble along, keep on rambling, and so Nate Salter made a very embarrassing comment. In fact, I told him that when we met him just recently. Here we were sitting at the Thanksgiving dinner table at the Lokshians. I've been there once before or twice before, and Dorothy's and Leo, my father-in-law now, Dorothy's father, had a wire recorder. Very vividly remember the whole family seated around the table, and Leo passed the wire recorder around, and he asked everybody to say something. So of course everybody said how nice it is, how good the food is, and Mary, Ellie's grandma, Dorothy's mother, my mother-in-law, Alea Shalom, passed away 3 years ago. She was an excellent cook. She always made the most gorgeous and most delicious dinners. So everybody made some comments, how nice the dinner was, and how nice the atmosphere was, how beautiful everything was arranged, until Nate's turn came to talk, and he comes out with this statement I'll never forget. He said, "Well, we're all very pleased to sit here and meet you and meet me and meet the rest of the crowds." And when he talks about me, he says, about this young man sitting on my side who is going to be the Lokshan's son-in-law. Boy, when I heard that, I thought that the earth split and I would fall down. I was so embarrassed, it wasn't even funny. I was terribly embarrassed, because Dorothy and I had never at that time decided or talked about it openly, made any final plans to get married. And he comes up with that statement that he's pleased to meet the Lokshan's future son-in-law. And everybody giggled and laughed. I think that recording is still around somewhere. It would be very funny to listen to it if you can find a wire recorder that'll work on it. Thank you so much, my dear son. Come on, sit down next to us. I feel much better if you sit down here. Excuse me. So that was the beginning of my entry into married life. Hey, where did you come from? Jumped over the fence. Did you jump? Did you just come over the fence? Here, come here. Come here. Introduce yourself.
That's Squash.
Squash, say hi.
Come here, Squash. Do you think she knows
we
the
have,
camera's on?
yeah, we have to light the charcoal pretty soon.
Oh, that's right.
Takes an hour. So ask one more question and then I think we'll
Okay,
take
so
a
when
break.
did you get married?
When did we get married? It's recorded on my ring here. June 21, 1950.
Whose ring was that, by the way?
I haven't finished the sentence.
Oh,
Excuse me.
sorry.
June 21, 1952.
Uh-huh.
Whose ring was this? This was your grandmother's ring. Your great-grandmother's ring, I'm sorry. Great-grandma Schulman. That was her wedding bang. And it was given to her, I think, maybe by her parents or by his parents or her husband's parents. And this is the second generation. I cherish the ring very much. And it was nice. So she liked me very much. In fact, I liked her also. Felt very close to her, and that's her way of that's her way of wishing us good luck in our married life.
So let's do a very quick synopsis of what it is that's happened between 1952 and 1984 in your life.
1952 to 1958, 1956, California. After I got married here, we lived here in Berkeley. Our first place was on Henry. Then we moved to 2009 Vine Street, very nearby here, until you were born. Then 1842 Dwight Way, Grove and Dwight,
Okay.
where Tommy was born.
So we lived in Berkeley.
And then we moved to El Sobrantio, San Pablo, 1956. 56, I went to Pennsylvania to look. Graduated in 1955, went to work in San Francisco for international engineering in 55, worked till 56 in San Francisco. Then went to Pennsylvania to look for a job with a company that wanted to open a branch office in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And joined that company of Israelis. That thing fell apart. By that time, you and your mother and your brother, who were babies at that, had joined up, and your brother, and your sister. Did I say your brother?
Yeah.
I hadn't seen that. I apologize. And your sister and your mother
Don't forget
drove
to
across.
apologize. Yeah.
They drove across country. Mind you, Dorothy drove at that time a 1947 Dodge from Berkeley to Apollo, Pennsylvania, and she didn't know, and she still doesn't know how to change a tire, mind you. Through Nevada, through the desert, with two babies and two kids in the back. Again, that's a story that I'd rather let her tell because she experienced it, and I can only say when she got to Apollo, Pennsylvania, the same day or the following day, she had two flats on the same day, and if she had one, or not to talk about two, on the way over, she would have been stuck and could have run into some serious trouble. Anyway, 57, we were in Apollo, thing fell apart, moved to New York. 58 went back to Israel. 58 till 1978, I, with my family, was in Israel, on and off since I worked for Tahal and was on overseas assignments since 1964, when we went to various countries. 78, I left the company and joined the World Bank. I've been with the World Bank since.
What countries did we live in between 1960 and 1978?
Between 1960 and 1978, I joined the company in 58. 4 years after I joined in 62, I had an FAO fellowship to come to this country again, and so your mother picked you guys up. At that time, of course, there were three, because Danny, our youngest one, was born in New York in 58 before we returned to Israel. So your mother picked all three of you up and came directly here, and the idea was that she would spend 6 months with her parents, and you guys would go to school here in the meanwhile, and I would join you here, and then we would return together to Israel in the beginning of 63, which we did. We generally carried this plan out. So 62, 63, you were here. It was more than 6 months, I think about 7 months. 64, we were in Turkey, in Adana, southern Turkey, for 1 year. 64, 65, or 65, 66. I think it was 65, 66. 67, we had the 6-Day War in Israel. We didn't go anywhere. After
And you
the 6-Day
participated
War,
in the war in the
yeah.
67.
But like everybody else, was called back into the active reserves and was on the front near Ramallah. I got more fighting in the two succeeding wars, in the 67 war and in the 73 war, than I got in the 48 war, where I was just in one or two actions, one or two skirmishes. But in 67 we were in the war, in 73 we were on the front line.
Then in 68?
68, 67, I went to Iran. I spent about 6 or 7 months in Iran.
Where were you in Iran?
In two places. Part of the time was in Qazvin. Part of the time I was in Tehran. But I think my base was Qazvin, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I had a room there. And I worked on a irrigation project, Talaran irrigation project. In 69, the family was supposed to join me and go to Iran. Last minute change. And instead of going to Iran, we all went to Colombia.
How long were we supposed to be in Iran?
In Iran, we were supposed to be, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever. But the deal was delayed. In fact, later on, some other people went to Iran. But since it was delayed and Colombia came up, the company decided that more urgent for me to go to Colombia. So in 68...
How did you feel, by the way, about being moved around?
I thought it was pretty interesting because, first of all, I would have never had a chance to go to these places on my own. Colombia sounded like an exotic place and so far away and close to the United States, so we figured it's not a bad idea. We would go there on the way over, go through the States, be able to visit the States every so often. It wasn't quite as that, but it was an interesting trip. It gave us an opportunity to see part of the world that otherwise we would have never seen. In fact, I've never been back to Colombia since we left. So Colombia went 68, 69, we were in Colombia. 69 we returned. And since 1970, the family had not joined me on any missions. We stayed put in Israel till 75, till you left.
What countries did you work in since 70 to 75?
From 70 to 75, I worked 1 or 2 missions to South America, Central America, as a matter of fact, or 1 or 2 missions to Brazil.
Did you ever go to Nicaragua as part of your mission?
I was not in Nicaragua, I was in Honduras. I was in Honduras, never in Nicaragua. And I was in the Dominican Republic a couple of times, I think, 2 or 3 times. And once I was I was in Nicaragua once. I was in Guatemala, right. Short time, I think a couple of weeks, 2 weeks. And then most of the time after that I spent in the Far East working I was sort of a desk officer in Israel, in Tel Aviv, working on projects in Korea, in Thailand, in Cambodia, in the Philippines, in Nepal. That's it.
Was there Fiji or...
No, Fiji.
Tahiti?
The World Bank had. The World Bank. From the World Bank missions, I did go to Fiji, but not working for Tahal. Tahal didn't have any projects in this country.
Okay, so in 78, 75, I came to the States, but in what year did you move to the World Bank?
Oh, in 1978. As a matter of fact, in December 1977, when you were here, of course, I met you. I came over with Motke Sela, if you remember, to negotiate a deal directly with the World Bank in Tahal, where Tahal got a contract to work on projects as a consultant, or as a contractor for the World Bank in Nepal. I came to Washington, and at that time I also filled out a questionnaire, or had already filled out one earlier, on the suggestion of an ex-professor of mine, Fred Hodes, who was with the bank and who retired recently. And in December, when I came to the bank for this Nepal contract to negotiate with the bank, I was also interviewed for a potential position with the bank. Went back to Israel, didn't hear anything from the bank. Went to Nepal in March, and while I went to Nepal in March, the cable had arrived that the bank had accepted my my application and was willing to offer me an appointment, but at this moment they didn't have any openings, which I found very strange. And your mother was so upset when she got the cable, she never forwarded it to me because she was sure she was convinced that I would have been personally felt very much of a letdown after applying for the bank and then getting a cable in principle saying yes, but we can't hire you because they have no open positions. A week later we got a cable, not only that they hired me and they had a position, but they wanted me to go on mission the following month already.
Where to?
To Philippines. First mission to the Philippines. Already an assignment. Come to Washington, you come to Washington on this and this date, and you'll be going to the Philippines 2 weeks or 3 weeks later. So
didn't exactly beat around the bush.
No, and that's exactly what I did. I quit my job at TAL in April, middle of April, took a few days off and came to the bank on May the 8th, 1978. Found a place to live in Georgetown on 30th Street. That's the place you visited with me, with Mrs. Tyson, 90-year-old landlady, in a 200-year-old house, incidentally, and very typically Victorian house in Georgetown. And since then, I've been with the bank.
And here you are coming back from another mission from
Indonesia, from Jakarta.
From Jakarta, and you've just been there for 30 days.
No, well, a little less. It was actually exactly 3 weeks to the day. From the day I landed to the day I left, Jakarta was exactly 3 weeks. And by the time I get back to Washington, it would have been 4 weeks since I started this mission, plus. Okay?
Well, that's...
Can we take a break now?
Yeah, that's enough.
You know that there was over an hour, Ellie. I look at my...